Hi, this is Caroline. Welcome to Soul Readings on Monday night, 6:30. That's Eastern Time. No one's here right now. This coming week, Wednesday, the 29th, Friday, the 31st, and then next week, all of next week through April 10th, I'm not going to do any live streaming because I'll be in Oregon. And so this will be our last time for some time. And so since nobody's here right now, I'll is someone here? I think someone might be here. What does this mean? Well, I see the number 2, but I don't know what that means. So I don't see any people's names in the top chat. So I don't know. So I'm just going to ask for guidance to see what should be said or communicated at this point in time today. I'm reaching out to Michael and ask him. And what he's saying is like, be at peace, be at perfect peace. All is well. Don't be afraid. Fear not. All is well. It seems like everything is unstable and changing very quickly. And all is well. All is well. You have nothing to worry about, nothing to fret. All is well. Be at ease, be at peace. All is well. I'll check in with Uriel. Uriel is another one of the archangels that I work with. He likes to he likes to be called the master magician, electrician. That's what he told me his name is. So so he like knows everything about the electrical system of the body, the energy system. He's really, really awesome. And it's so funny the way that I see him is with a tool belt on. He's a lot of times when I get into a situation where it's really complicated, he'll just be like, step back. And then I'll just step back and he'll be like, da-da, okay, that's it. So he's super awesome. And then, so I'll ask Uriel, do you have a message for us today, Uriel? Oh, he's kind of saying the same thing. You are fine and all is well. He said, it's okay to be angry. Anger cleans you. So what he's saying is that the way the world is running right now, there's like the earth has this like terror that there's too much anger. That anger is going to consume the earth. The earth is afraid that humanity's anger will consume it. And he's like, I can't let that happen, or I won't let that happen. I can't let that happen. He's going to save the earth and humanity. It's like, how are you going to do that? Save the earth and humanity. Let's see about saving the earth. How are you going to save the earth, Uriel? He said he's going to wrap the earth up in a baby blanket and rock it. He's going to cuddle the earth and rock it. until it feels better. It'll feel better. And what about humanity, Odiel? How are you going to help the anger of humanity that seems to just be burgeoning? He said, I can help that too. What will you do, Odiel? How can you help the anger of humanity? So what he's saying is that humanity is like confused, like they're experiencing a lot of anger, but what they really have is fear. And the fear is really because of the alienation of humanity from nature. And so the solution is to, hi Jim. I'll, I'm happy to, I'm glad you're here, and I'll if you have a question or anything, just write it down and we'll do it. I was just saying about Odiel, and he's saying that humanity's real problem is fear, not anger, that the anger is born of fear. And the real problem is the fear itself. And the fear comes from alienation from nature. So how do we come back into communion with nature? And what he's saying is, remember, you are nature. So it's the same thing. It's like come into communion with yourself, because you are nature. It's really an alienation from the self, which is the same as an alienation from the whole. And so how do we heal that, Uriel? This alienation from the self, which is an alienation from the whole, which is the same as an alienation from nature. Oh, he's saying that we need to be rocked too. We need a baby blanket, and we need to be held and rocked just like the earth, to take away our fears. So much fear. Until you remember, he said, I'm going to rock you until you remember that you're not separate. Until you remember that all is one. No, until you remember you're not alienated from the self, you're not alienated from each other, you're not alienated from nature, that all is one. He's going to rock us. That's awesome. Thanks, Sodia. Janice here. And oh, that's awesome. She's journaling with Michael. Yeah. Oh no. So she's asking, she's saying that she doesn't feel like she loves people unconditionally. And if she's wondering, like, if Michael is us and we are Michael, then does that mean that Michael has our fears and our anger and um our other feelings, like inability to connect with unconditional love? So I'm gonna ask Michael. Okay, so what he's saying is like, um that sense that you don't have the capacity, or you're not experiencing unconditional love with everyone, is a farce. He's using the word farce. He said you're misperceiving. And so what happens, the progression is that initially we misperceive, and then we perceive correctly, and then we come to a place of knowing. And so knowing is where we really should be at. So we move from misperceiving to perceiving correctly to knowing. And so Michael is saying that the sense that you have that you can't or you aren't connecting with people with unconditional love is a farce, and that's a misperception. So let's find out more about that. Can you explain that more, Michael? So what he's saying is this sense of not experiencing unconditional love is really born of a sense of separation. And so it's like the unconditional love is a symptom, but the disease is that of not perceiving correctly or knowing that we are connected. And so this is not like a Michael thing. This is not a quality that he has, which is to say, it's not a quality that you have. You do not have the quality of not being able to connect to people with unconditional love. You have that quality because that is a quality of Michael, and you are one. And so what that means is that you're misperceiving your ability to experience or to connect with unconditional love. And so how do we learn that if that's an intrinsic part of ourselves, if it's an intrinsic part of ourselves to connect with others through unconditional love, and yet we don't perceive ourselves as doing that, how do we learn to correctly perceive and know this connection with unconditional love with others? How do we do that? Okay. So he's saying that sometimes it feels like that unconditional love is too big, like it would be overwhelming. And so that feels scary to us. And so what we want to do is kind of like take a step back and to encourage ourselves, and also to so he's saying like recalibrate. We need to recalibrate so that unconditional love does not feel overwhelming and scary, like something that's too big. So overwhelming love, I sorry, well, that's what it is. It's unconditional love feels like an overwhelming love. And that feels scary. Unconditional love doesn't have to be scary. Unconditional love doesn't have to feel overwhelming. So unconditional love doesn't mean that we like approve of or condone what other people do or think or say or whatever. It means that we're able to see into their heart of hearts who they really, really are in their souls. And that comes through experience. That comes through seeing, through knowing ourselves. We have to know ourselves first in order to know someone else. So Spirit or Michael is saying, like, we need to take a step back, because the real issue isn't having unconditional love for somebody else. It's having unconditional love for ourselves. The real issue is having unconditional love for ourselves. We have to practice this. So what does that mean? What do we need to do? So the first thing is to be still. We have to be still. And how do we be still? How do we become still? The way that we become still is through the breath. So the breath teaches us how to become still. With the breath, we breathe in for the count of 3 seconds in, breathe out for the count of 7 seconds out, 6 times a minute. This is the pattern of breathing that brings us to a place of stillness. When we breathe in, we stimulate the sympathetic nervous system. When we breathe out, we stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. And they need to be in the correct ratio, which is 3 sympathetic to 7 parasympathetic. And so when we practice this breath, we come into a place of stillness. And it's in that place of stillness that we know. And in that knowing, that's where we can see ourselves clearly, and we can connect first with ourselves with unconditional love. We see who we really are in our heart of hearts. And that means withholding judgment. That means no judgment. No judgment. Judgment is the old way. Judgment and punishment is the old way. The old way is too limiting because it chops things up. It's good and bad, yes and no, sin and not sin, heaven and hell, all those things. And what we're doing is moving past that into having clarity. Having clarity means knowing. It means knowing, seeing clearly what is true. And in our heart of hearts, there is no need for judgment. It is safe to have unconditional love first for ourselves. That's why we have to practice it. We have to practice on ourselves first. And so, in this place of stillness and knowing, this is where we get to know ourselves and practice unconditional love. And so, one of the things that's helpful to do is to be vigilant and to notice if there is like negative talk or self-judgment. And so if you notice the mind is going into a place where it's critical, usually the criticism is going to be strongest towards ourselves. And so that's where we have to start, because we're not able to see anyone else clearly. We're not able to withhold judgment from anyone else until we can do it for ourselves. And so this vigilance requires that every time a negative thought comes, a judgmental or critical thought comes into your mind, focusing on yourself, that you note it, right? So the first thing is to note it. Note that critical thought. And then what do? Then the next step is to say, usually out loud is best, something kind of like the opposite in a positive way about yourself over and over and over again until it feels true, until it is true, until you know it, until it doesn't feel like fake. It doesn't feel like a lie. And it is a kind of discipline. And it's hard to do. So usually what'll happen is when we're starting to learn this process, we won't realize all the negative thought, all the critical thought we have until kind of like after the fact. Then we'll be like, wait a minute, what have I been thinking for the past 5 minutes? It's been going around in my head that I've been thinking these terrible things about myself. And so then you nip it. You call yourself out and you're like, okay, I'm going to stop that. I said this negative thing about myself. Now I'm going to say kind of like the opposite positive thing about myself until the charge is taken away, right? Until it feels resolved or true, right? And then you're going to do that, practicing a vigilance, where you're going to notice any negative thought you have about yourself, any critical thought you have about yourself. Call yourself out on it and then switch it. And then pretty soon it'll get closer and closer and closer to the event. And then you'll just be like, wait, I'm not really having those negative thoughts anymore. I'm not having those critical thoughts anymore. And so it's like an erasure. It's like a forgetting of that criticism. And then as we come into this place of love for the self, of unconditional love for the self, that does not feel overwhelming and that just feels right. It feels like that big hug, feels like being rocked. Then there's this like sense of safety that comes over us, so that we stop seeing people in opposition to ourselves. We stop seeing others as dangerous, and we can see into their heart for who they really are. Now, we're not going to want to spend time with everybody. Not everybody is healthy to spend time with. We're not going to want to have conversations with everybody. Not everybody is healthy to have a conversation with. But if we take a step back far enough, then we can see who they are in their heart of hearts. We can see whatever injury they had, we can see whatever burdens they bear. And we can it's really unconditional love. Another way of saying unconditional love is to say grace. Is to say I extend grace to you because I see you who you are in your heart of hearts as a wounded person. I extend grace to you. You're not healthy for me to be around. You're not healthy for me to communicate with, or, whatever it is. But still, I see you in your heart of hearts and I extend grace to you, which is another way of saying unconditional love. I'm going to ask Michael if there's anything else here. And Michael is just saying, like, it's so important to get this because we really get confused about this matter. Like, we think that if we love people unconditionally, then we have to either put up with what they do, or that we're actually like condoning what they do, or that we have to spend time with them, or things like that. And those are really separate issues. Those are separate issues. Unconditional love simply means I see who you are in your heart of hearts, and I extend grace to you in your wounded state. And then you decide what's right to do, how you want to spend your time, what's edifying for you. Those are totally different things. Yeah. And so you, it's like, it's like Michael, the archangels, God, it's not like they're the lowest, everything balances out to the lowest common denominator. No, it's that we are lifted up as we recognize ourselves in them and them in us. We are lifted up to our potential. They're not they're not minimized. We're lifted up. We're maximized. Does that make sense? uh yeah, it's funny, right? How all these questions are like interconnected. And yeah, good. Yeah. It's I was learned so much. It's so there's the guys are so generous. Yeah. Thank you for joining today. I really appreciate it. And I think, Jen, that you're like speaking our hearts. Like, you're speaking the questions that we all have. And I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for showing up and for being the voice of the people. Really, you're the voice of all of us. Thank you so much. That means so much to me. And again, I'm going to be gone. I'm not going to be doing these. Ah. I'm going to be gone in Portland for the next couple weeks. I'll be back it'll be the 12th of April. So I'm not going to be able to do these when I'm in Portland. So I'll post on Facebook when I get back to remind you guys that that'll be the 12th of April, I believe. But thank you so much, and I hope everybody has a nice evening.